Hey, this is Ramon, Channels Alpha 4, and this is going to be questions for Catholic apologists. The reason it's not called questions for Catholics is because I'm already Catholic. But any Catholic that wants to answer this, feel free. And anyone else who's not Catholic, who just happens to think they know the answer, feel free to answer as well. My only request is that you answer the question that I'm asking, not the question you think I'm asking. Okay? All right. Now, I just want to set a baseline level of knowledge here. So, I have read the Catechism. I have read a Catholic Bible dictionary. So this is from the New American Bible. And I have read the Bible. In fact, I've read it 6 times. And that was the NAB, but I've also read the NRSV, and I've also read the New King James Version. Okay? But for Catholics, both the NRSV and the NAB were the Catholic versions. Okay? And I have an Orthodox and an academic Bible. It has the extra text that's in the Orthodox Bible. So I have read the Bible. Okay? All right, so that's the baseline knowledge. There you go. So the answers to my questions need to be at that level or higher, not lower. So if you're going to go below that level, then those answers just won't help me. And these are going to be real questions. They're not setup questions. They're not easy questions. These are real questions that I have. So please answer them. I wrote these out so I can make sure that they're worded correctly. So I'm going to be reading from a script. Just how it is. All right. Why do Catholic apologists spend so much time on Protestant issues? There are other major religions and popular beliefs outside of Protestantism. Yet most Catholic apologists spend very little time arguing the differences in our own beliefs, and very rarely do we touch on Islam, socialism, Buddhism, or Taoism. Now, I know we do touch on atheism, but we don't go very deep into that either. Okay, that's question number 1. Kind of a softball, but I figure it's a good way to get started. Question number 2. Why do we have such a hard stance on women's roles in the church? As we can have women lectors, why can't we have official roles for nuns or religious women in these stations, such as Eucharistic ministers or homilists? If we can have children's masses and healing masses, as well as female altar servers, why can we not have women focus masses, where the priest's only role is the mass, but the nun or sister can do the homily, or if by a dogmatic rule they're not allowed to do the homily, where they could maybe preach or speak before or after the Mass, but from the podium, which is not part of the official ceremony. In other words, why can't women have an official instead of unofficial role in the church? I'm not asking for them to be priests, but many nuns and many sisters do work as secretaries at a church. Why not give them an official role beyond that? If they're already doing these roles, why not give them an official status? That's question number 2. Okay. Question number 3. Why do we, but especially Catholic apologists, take a soft line on biblical beliefs such as the literal interpretation of the Bible? We, in our own circles, tell each other that these things are not defined. Yet when a Protestant or evangelical calls in with an un-Catholic belief, we play into their ability to hold on to their false belief in any non-dogmatic theology they choose. For instance, we say that the creation story is not literal, yet we tell someone who thinks that it is literal that they are allowed to believe what they want to about it. I don't understand this. I am not saying that we set up a standard which will not hold up. I am not saying that we say this is the exact date the Bible was written. I'm not saying that we say this is the exact date that the world began. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying we know when it didn't happen. So it would go a long way, especially when talking to the more secular part of society, for us to say we do not agree with the more, let's call them, with the more literalist interpretation of the Bible. For us just to simply say it, not just pronounce it, but actually say, look, these are the things that we don't believe, not as heresies, but as simply, as a matter of fact, that we know that science contradicts these facts. Why can't we just say that? It would go a long way when we're dealing with secular society to help explain our beliefs when they start comparing us and confusing us with Protestant beliefs. It's very hard when we're trying to express our Catholic point of view and they're only hearing Protestant talking points. It's a tough sell. It's a tough conversation to have, where you have to end up, instead of having the conversation you want to have, you end up having to explain what Catholics actually believe versus what Protestants or evangelicals, especially fundamentalist and literalist, believe. It's just really hard to get beyond that talking point sometimes, even with just friends. I cannot tell you how many times somebody came to me with what an evangelical preacher said on TV, what a televangelist or one of those prosperity teachers said on TV. And then I have to explain to them, no, that isn't Catholic teaching. That I don't believe that. It's just a hard thing to deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's a constant correction. Fourth question. We're going to start getting harder now. What is your opinion on forced conversion? And remember, I'm asking this to Catholic apologists specifically, but anyone who's Catholic or anyone who just has a strong opinion on this, feel free to answer. And when I'm asking about forced conversion, I am not asking, what do we tell outsiders or those who are uninformed? I am asking as someone who is a member of the church and whose family has had to go through forced conversion on both sides. For instance, and just to be clear, I'm very happy being Catholic. I chose to be Catholic myself. I was born Catholic. I live in a region where the majority of people who live here are Catholic. Just understand, born Catholic, raised in an area where it's mostly Catholic. So I'm not coming from a place of doubt or a place of hate. I'm simply asking, this happen, okay? So for instance, on my mother's side is Native American, and the conquistadors came through and destroyed all the texts and all the documents that we have. I'm from South Texas. My family goes back to the tribes that were in Mexico, and the conquistadors destroyed a lot of the books, and the only thing that's left of our ancestral writings is the Popol Vuh. Now this is real, okay? So this is not one of those things where you can just be like, well, you don't really understand the context. I understand the context quite well. Okay. Then, and again, we were Native American, and now we're Christian. So I'd like an explanation for that. As well as on my father's side, and here there's actual documental proof of forced conversion, which is my father's family were Sephardic Jews, and they, during the Reconquista, converted. And the choice was either convert, leave, or die. And we, my family, chose to convert. But here's the thing about that. Spain recently, like in the last few years, decided to give everyone who had to go through that diaspora because of that forced conversion and because of the Reconquista and because of the actions of the Inquisition. Anyone who wanted to come back to Spain and now be a member could, but you had to go look on these family name lists. And I was able to find my family. And because my family happens to have we happen to have the same name going back generations, I was able to go right back to find my family name. And sure enough, we are on one of those lists. So this is not hypothetical. This is literal. This is real. It's coming from a place with actual proof. So, since I have family records of my family converting at the time under Queen Elizabeth, how am I, or any of us with this history, supposed to reconcile that with our current faith? And more so, how is the current and future church supposed to reconcile our current teaching with the practices of our members as a whole, or even as a majority in the past? In other words, we now say that these kind of actions were wrong, but we cannot deny that people who shared our faith did these things in the past, and they did it in a vast number. They did it in a world-changing event kind of way. So how are we as members, as believers, supposed to deal with that? Not as outsiders looking in who are judging it, as someone whose membership in the church and whose family was directly affected by these things. How are we supposed to reconcile that with our faith and with what we know the truth of the church to be today? You think that one's hard? Oh, we're just getting harder. Question number 5. Why do we act as if abortion is more than just a mortal sin? I know that this question seems misleading, but let me explain. Murder is not unforgivable in the Catholic Church. And while we do not and should not encourage it, why do we treat those who support abortion as if they do not have logical reasons behind it? We treat them as if all their reasons are either emotional or induced by Satan. And let me explain. For instance, we all understand that if a pregnancy is not viable, for instance, the child is missing a brain, or missing the lungs, or missing a body and it's just the head, or it's just a body and it's missing the head, and the life of the mother is on the line, that abortion is not a major sin in that specific circumstance. In that specific circumstance, abortion is not a major sin. If the life of the child is not viable and the mother's life is on the line. And we also understand that there are morally gray areas, such as when both the child and the mother may die if the birth is allowed to continue, if it's allowed to go forward, and that the priest will advise on the life of the child, but the priest will not downplay the value of the life of the mother. If we understand those kind of subtleties in our personal interactions with people, why can we not address those subtleties and present them when we're making our case against things like abortion? Why is this, the fact that we understand that there are morally complicated situations, morally complex situations, why is this not highlighted in our propaganda against this practice? Instead, we lump ourselves in with extremists who do things like attack abortion clinics and kill people. Those people are not our people. So why are we acting as if we are on the same level as those people? We shouldn't be doing that. I think that's a mistake, and that's going to lead into the next question. Why do we as Catholics act, this is question number 6, why do we as Catholics act as if homosexuality is more than just a sin? I know that we are now making this more clear. I know that right now that the church has been doing a major outreach to the homosexual community. I know that. To the LGBTQ community, we have been doing a major outreach program. I get that. But that wasn't the case 5 years ago. And we had a very different tone in the way we dealt with them. And we still are not doing a good job of making our view, our biblically based view, very clear to the larger public. For instance, we do not explain to them what sin is, and we do not explain to them what sin means to us particularly as Catholics. It means something very different than what it means to Protestants, and it means something completely different than what the secular world think sin means. So why aren't we being more clear on what we mean by sin? This lack of clarity makes it very easy for those who oppose our message to misunderstand us and mischaracterize us. They mischaracterize our beliefs because we are being cryptic about what we are saying. Because we are lumping ourselves in with extremists, and we shouldn't do that. Okay. Again, answer the question I'm asking, not the question you think I'm asking. Okay. Question number 7. We're just going to keep getting more controversial. Why do we as Catholics hate contraception? It literally prevents abortions. I'm not saying that sex outside of marriage is not a sin. That's not what I'm saying. But if someone robs a bank, you would tell them to wear a bulletproof vest. A sin is a sin. Nothing more, nothing less. And I know that there's some apologists on Catholic Answers who don't agree with that statement. I'm already ready for that, okay? But the consequences of committing a sin can be mitigated. And in this case, they can be mitigated by protection. So if someone's going out and hurting people, and you can stop whatever that is, so let's say there's a disease, you can stop that disease from spreading, the person's already committing a sin. What is the problem with telling someone who does not share our beliefs and is not part of our belief system that it's okay to wear protection if you're not going to be chaste? What's wrong with saying that? I don't understand. They are already committing a sin by fornicating outside of marriage, and maybe through sodomy. So why do we act as if the condom is the worst part of that single act? I don't get that approach. That seems like a weird approach. I don't understand why we are asking people to follow our rules when we are all about free will. We're all about people being free to choose to follow God or not follow God. If they're not baptized, if they're not Catholic, if they don't believe in God, if they're atheists, why are we asking them to follow our rules? It has to be a choice. The whole point of free will and free choice is that people can choose to follow of their own volition. Why are we trying to take that away from some people? I can understand you saying in the Catholic Church, and I can understand you saying, I do not want your values to come in and tell the Catholic Church what our values should be. I get that. I get that. We don't want the secular world telling us our values. But why are we telling the secular world that they have to follow our values? I don't understand that. An addendum to the last two questions. These rules are set up because the worst possible outcome of homosexuality and contraception is to deny the command to be fruitful and multiply, and therefore would lead to the decline of the human race. But this argument does not take into account the fact that modern science can let people have children without sex. And this does not take into account either that homosexuals can have children through adoption, non-biological, or through in vitro means. So they can either have it through non-biological means or through in vitro means. So it just seems like we are denying the current level of science. And I know that you're going to make the argument, well, science might fall away, societies crumble, maybe we'd go back to the Dark Ages. But then if we go back to a time where science isn't viable, which seems ridiculous, but let's say that happens, then you can go back to saying, okay, we can't be using condoms because the human race is going to go extinct. But as of right now, the human race is not going extinct. And in lab rats, when overpopulation happens, homosexuality increases, okay? There are chemicals that can tell if someone's attracted to one or the other. There are brain patterns that can tell gender, okay? All that stuff is real in science. I don't understand why we who believe in science are denying this one aspect because it disagrees with us ethically. We should be able to face the fact that we are in an ethical dilemma and not try to force science or even people who are not Christian, not Catholic, who don't believe in God and who may be atheists to conform to our rules. I just don't understand our approach. And lastly, if priests used to be able to get married, if we allow priests that come in from other rites to remain married, if we admit that Eastern Orthodox has valid orders and ordainship, and they are allowed to get married, and to a lesser extent, that Catholic deacons can stay married if they were married before discernment, why can't we make a decree to allow priests the sacrament of marriage? It would help increase our priestly numbers, and yes, allow there to be a vow of monasticism for those who want it, but allow a way for those who want to be married to a woman to also serve as ordained. And not just ordained minister, because I think there's some kind of role with that. I'm talking about as a priest. Why not? The Orthodox Church does it. Shouldn't we? Also, on that note, going back to the roles of women in the church, there in the Orthodox Church, the wife of the priest ends up having an elevated status, and she sometimes will do special lectures dedicated to certain subjects, certain study subjects. That is a role that could be official. You can make an official role for a woman in that capacity. Also, with the priest marriage thing, I really do think it would help. It would help a lot of people come to the church. It would help bring in more priests. It would help with our public perception. It would really help with a lot of things if we simply allowed there to be priests who could get married, who could marry. I'm not saying all priests. I'm saying yes, let priests who want to take a vow of chastity take it. But those who don't want to take that vow of chastity, let there still be a way for them to become priests. Anyway, so there you go. Those are the questions. Please answer the questions I'm asking, not the questions you think I'm asking. Okay? I am not asking what you think I'm asking. I'm asking literally what I asked. Okay? I'm talking about approach. I'm talking about reason here. All right. Peace, like, subscribe. Talk to you later.